On today's episode of Let's Talk Dog Business, Vicky and I are going to be doing something a little bit differently, where we're going to be answering your questions that you've submitted to us on our Facebook group. So, Vicky, my dear, I have my Facebook feed in front of me, and this was a post we posted a while ago asking what questions would people have for us if we had 30 minutes together. So we thought we'd do a short episode and get some of these answered. So one question is, how do I increase my perceived value? Struggling with this one because we're attracting the wrong clients.
Yeah, it's a really common one, isn't it?
It is.
Perceived value. So perceived value can be perceived as slashing prices, can't it?
Yeah.
It's a tactic that most do to get audiences to think that's really valuable. Like, I need that thing because it's cheap, but is cheap always good?
Yeah. And perceived value ideally should be, it's this non-tangible thing, isn't it? It's like, what is somebody willing to give you for the service that you are offering? So we actually had this conversation the other day when I think I'd ordered like a cheese bean toastie or something from Costa, and it was like, what, £4? And then we're going, do you know what? I could probably make about 15 of these if I just went and bought a loaf of bread and the beans and the cheese. Yeah, I could make loads.
And actually, we ended up shoving it into a napkin and taking it out into the car park. Yeah, so we didn't even have the experience of eating it.
So the perceived value, again, is going to be subjective to everyone. And I think that is a crucial bit to consider when you're going perceived value, because it is subjective. So no matter what you put in your product or service, it is not going to be for everybody.
And also, the perceived value of your client isn't necessarily your own perceived value, because we've actually had this conversation about our services that we offer.
Yes, we have.
And we've said we're not our ideal client. We might not even buy
for the dog
what we
training.
offer for the dog training. We might not even buy what it is we offer.
There's no might. I wouldn't.
You've said definitively. I may do, but we are not our clients. So we have to take ourselves out of it and take a step back, which is really, really difficult, isn't it? I think it's difficult to imagine you are the consumer, imagine you're the client, and to think, what would I feel would be a reason to buy something over the next thing? And that's a really good start, is to maybe just go, what things do I absolutely like? What products or services do I shout about? Would I not go anywhere else? It's absolutely got to be that place where I get it from, or that shop that I go to. You know, let's think of the high street, Next or Zara, like for women's clothes shops. Like, what is it about that over maybe Primark that you might, spend your cash on?
Yeah.
So there's something about those places that people prefer. Let's face it, Primark often copy the designer styles, and they pretty much are the same. Okay, the quality might not be the same, they might not last as long, but they pretty much are. Like, if you've got limited funds, you could look at it that way. But is it the whole experience of going shopping in that place? Is it even, I know it sounds ridiculous, I have been encouraged to buy something from a certain shop because of the bag they give you.
Oh my God.
So I used to be a massive Cath Kidston fan, and for me, the whole experience of Cath Kidston was like, the shop assistants were always lovely. They always wore the clothes. They'd always come and chat to you. They were always pretty like funky, actually. And the bag you got was like amazing. And I'd keep it and reuse it for loads of things. And it was like, I've got a Cath Kidston bag. So I might have bought a Cath Kidston bag, and then it's in a Cath Kidston bag that I can take round with me and show off that bag as well. So
Apple do that really well.
Yeah, they do.
People keep the empty laptop boxes because it's a nice box.
I've still got I don't even have an iPhone, and I've got an old Apple box from my old phone, and like that sticker that you can stick. They give you that Apple sticker, don't they?
Yeah. This is it, but this is that perceived value bit. Like, it's going to be subjective to everyone, but when you know your audience and your market so well, like you know it inside out, everything just becomes so much easier. And again, people have a choice. They don't have to buy from you, and it's okay. So that perceived value is so important. And then that's where this particular question went into attracting the wrong clients. It's because there must be a values mismatch somewhere. Like you're saying one thing, they're expecting something else, and it doesn't align. So that's where we would go back to on that one and just really have a little think about it.
I mean, that is a very, very quick overview of perceived value. We could do a whole episode just on perceived value. And it does run through a lot of our episodes, actually. If you listen to us a lot, you'll hear that come up a lot. So lots of real world examples of perceived value.
Absolutely. Sorry, so I'm reading a bit more into the next one then. So attracting the wrong people for us, and people take the piss. They don't listen. They don't update us or return for sessions that they have booked and paid for as part of blocks. It's like it's not worth anything to them and just can't be asked.
So when I hear a question like that, I see a lack of structure. So if you are experiencing something like that, where you're waiting for the client to do something they're not doing. So in that one, they're taking the piss. They're not booking. They're not booking?
So they've paid for sessions as part of a block and then just not booking the sessions.
Not booking the sessions. So how has it been able to get to that point where the client isn't booking the sessions then?
Yeah.
Like surely the process, there's something gone wrong in the process. If we're leaving it to the client, they're not doing it, well, isn't it our job to lead that and guide them and make sure that journey for them is absolutely amazing?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to me, that kind of ties in with that perceived value bit again. It's like, well, how am I valuing those sessions? Because you'd like to think, wouldn't you, if there's been an exchange of money, like if I've paid you for something, I'm going to get my stuff. And this is where the differences of people will come in again, because arguably there will be some people out there that will go, do you know what, I'm going to grab every ounce of your time and energy that I can to make sure that I am getting what I perceive as that value bit from you. And then there will be others that, yes, they go, well, do you know what, if I've got, let's face it, dog trainers are much of a muchness, aren't they? It still hasn't changed in the last 10 years. You can buy a consult or 3 sessions or 5 sessions. And is there any parameters around when they're delivered? So is it just like, are we saying it? And I think a lot of people refer to T's and C's on this. Well, it's in the T's and C's.
Yeah, but is it obvious? Is it clear? Is it
Who reads the T's and C's?
No one reads the T's and C's unless there's a real big problem. But it's that positioning of it, isn't it? Like if you call it, like with our programs, we have called ours in the past 90-day program or 6-month program. Like that's as simple as it gets. Like it might have another name, but it's pretty much, oh yeah, that's the 90-day program, which is the 3-month, that's the 6-month program. Oh, great. So already just in that name, people are going, right, okay, so it's a lengthy program. That's good. So I get your support for that length of time. And it means that that's when a sort of a start and an end date of it. Now, with the way we work, there's never usually an end date to it. Like, I mean, there is eventually, but that isn't always the end of the service. There's more that they can do with this. But that that program package, whatever you want to call it, is that length of time. And it's really clear from the outset. There's no kind of like, yeah, we'll just let that booking go on for a year and then we're frustrated the owners haven't booked their sessions. It's like we get those sessions in. Everyone knows what they're working towards. Yes, they can change if, the worst happens and they need to change something, or we do. But there's like the sort of the scene is set, like they know what to expect.
Yeah, and I think with ours, we're very good at saying like there are a set amount of sessions that fall within that program, but they are delivered fortnightly or 3 weekly or whatever it may be, whatever we decide together with the client. And it's set in, and we actually book them in advance because it's part of a program. So I think that positioning bit of, well, you've paid for 5 sessions. And even if you used to say, as long as they're used within, and I'm going back to how I used to probably phrase it to people. Oh yeah, you can use them within whenever you want, because actually I'm just trying to get the sale in the first place. So I could be like, oh yeah, okay, so we'll book them that first session. First session's booked in, and then we're like, okay, see you on the next one. Bye now.
Yeah.
And it's all left up to them. I was like, so are you going to get them in?
Yeah. Don't you feel like sometimes though, it's that fear of determining what someone needs? Like, I think I've heard this a lot is, who am I to say when they should have them booked in? And it's like, well, it's your business, and it's your service, and you're the professional. Why shouldn't you be guiding them? And actually, if we give them no guidance, how are they supposed to know when they should book the sessions in then? Like, if it was left to me and I was, I don't know, doing some service that I'd never done before, I'd never taken advice from anyone before, and they're like, yeah, we'll leave you to it. Oh, okay. Like, I don't really know how often, what's the norm, what do you normally suggest, what works? Like, I'd want those questions answered for me. And if we're just leaving it to the client, I'm afraid that is not good enough for the client. Enough.
And you will actually hear phrases from the client going like, okay, so what are the next steps and how do I get the rest booked in then? And then if they're having to ask you first, then said from a place of love, you are not doing your job well enough if those questions are being asked, because everything should be really clear and simple from the customer.
Yeah, and every time you go through that process with a customer, if you're brand new to it, for example, and you've never done anything like that before, and you're trying to create the customer journey and the process, you are going to get feedback, and you're going to then hopefully adjust that process so that that feedback is incorporated, like that the question was left unanswered because you hadn't factored that in yet, but now you factored it in for the next person, that's going to be a smoother process.
Yeah.
So I think it's all good learning. Like, try not to be frustrated with the customer. Use that feedback as a way that you can go, I can make that service even better then, because I'm listening to them and I'm taking on board what they're saying, and I can just weave that into a better, smoother process for them.
Yeah. Everything is take learnings for yourselves all the time. Oh
God, this sounds ominous.
How much should I charge?
Wow.
I feel like that needed dramatic effect.
I mean, I used to get asked. So I offered many services, and I used to get generic Facebook messages saying, how much do you charge?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I do dog walking.
That good
I do one-to-one training. I do puppy classes. I do hoopers. I do scent work. I do all this stuff. What is it you want? But again, I might get frustrated in that. I know we're going back to the last point now, but I might get frustrated. Like, what do you mean? What are you asking for? Well, clearly there was too many services for them and they didn't actually know what they should be asking for. So yeah, kind of by the way. But how much do I charge?
How much do you
Age-old
charge?
question.
Let's go through some strategies that are typically out there for advice. So I've been told previously, go and have a look at what everybody else is doing. Be the average or be the cheapest. And I'm like, what?
A little bit of undercutting.
Yes. I've also had advice that goes like, look at what everybody else is charging and be the most expensive.
Okay.
I've also had look at what everybody else is charging, then work out exactly what you need to make and reverse engineer a price. So, for example, I think it's easier to think of that one when, like, if you were doing a product, let's say, and so like, when you used to sell your chews and stuff on your puppy classes, you would buy the product for X amount, you would sell it for X amount. So therefore there's profit. So there's that you need to work out. But then if you are also working out, right, if I'm looking at all my bills that are going out every month, like, what is that figure? Fuel, mortgage, rent, all of that, like, add up all your bills. And then figure out how much you then need to earn per hour off the back of it. So like you divide it all. So arguably you're going, oh, okay, so my hourly rate may actually be a lot more than what we're probably charging. Because I reckon for the majority of households, your hourly rate would end up needing to be somewhere like 200 quid. And then everyone goes, I'm never going to make that. But that's where you kind of reverse engineer the exact amount that you need to make. And I think out of all of those strategies, at least that one gives you a bit more like understanding of what you should be air quote charging.
I was looking at a dog walkers / like boarders group, Facebook group yesterday, and this question actually came up on what should I charge? List of people saying, I charge this, I charge that. And it turns out this person was charging like the equivalent of £12 an hour for dog sitting.
Wow.
In someone's home. And then also one of the comments came up like, well, I'm only just sat there with the dog. And it's like, you are responsible for that dog. Mm-hmm. You are there to care for it. You are like, without you, that person couldn't go on holiday or they couldn't do what they're doing. Like, you are their sole responsibility. If something happens, you have to rush that dog to the vets or adjust your life like accordingly to be able to deal with that issue. And I think this is where the problem comes with that mindset of going, well, I'm just sat here looking after it. I'm just sat watching TV.
Yeah.
But it's your time.
It is your time. And I came on this because I've done a few sittings for people before. And certainly since I've had the kids, because arguably I probably did have that mindset a few years back. I was like, oh, it's just me and Darren and, you know, it's fine. I'll just go in and chill there instead and it's fine. Whereas now I'm like, the impact for me to be away from home is so great because of the 2 young kids and the fact that we have a business that we're running. So if I'm out of the business, it arguably takes the earning potential away because I'm just sat there doing nothing, air quote.
But you can't do anything else.
But I can't do anything else. So the impact it has on everything else. And then for me, I was having to get additional help with childcare. So the headache that came with that, because I'm staying away as well. And then Darren's got to navigate work. And then I've got to do all of this other stuff and still service clients. It's like hold on.
And also, if you're in, there are many dogs that can't be left at all. Somebody has a sitter in because that dog cannot be left. It's got like separation anxiety or whatever. So like you cannot even leave the house in some cases. And people are charging like 12 quid an hour for some of these, like, because they're breaking it into an hourly rate as well. So it's like, oh yeah, but if it's such and such a day, and then that works out at £12, I'm like, what? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I think the charging bit is really, it's not a clear-cut answer, is it? Because it comes back actually to probably that first question of that perceived value. Like, what is the person going to be getting from you? And arguably, let's face it, pricing for every single company out there, whether you're doing it by yourself or you're a big company, it's a bit of stick your finger in the air and just make it up.
Yeah.
It totally make it up. There is no logical sense to pricing anything, as long as it's a fair exchange. And that fair exchange, again, is so subjective, because ultimately, if it's a win for you and it's a win for them, if someone's happy to pay you £1,000 for 5 training sessions and you're happy to receive it, it's a win-win.
Well, it's a bit like house valuations, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, a house is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So you could put a house up for sale that's worth, like, when you look at all the others around you, it could be worth like 300,000 and you put it up for 800 because you're like, let's see what happens. And if someone's willing to pay for that house because they want to live there so much, or the location is exactly what they need and they want, and they've got like no other opportunity to ever get that house again, they might pay you 800,000. Yeah. Does that mean they got ripped off? No, because it's a choice.
Yeah, I don't have to have it. So everything is about if it feels right for them and it feels right for you, then it's all good. But likewise, if your pricing wants to be £50 and you're happy to receive that and someone's happy to pay you that, then that's also a fair exchange. It's just all about what you're happy to receive and what the other person is happy to exchange to pay you for, really.
Yeah, and I think it does come down to that, if you're happy to receive it. Because if you need, like, let's go back to what you were saying before about working out your, like, how much you pay out with your bills and your mortgage and all of that, and you've got literally nothing left and what's coming in is not going to cover it. Well, how are you going to be happy with that? And then this is where we get these Facebook groups where everybody's whinging about the cost of living and the cost of everything. And it's like, well, if you charged a little bit more accordingly, then you would be happier. So I think that's the baseline, is the happy. Are you happy? Are you happy to accept that money? Great, you can do it. If you can afford to do it cheaper and you really want to give back, give back. But most people can't. And that's it.
Like, everybody has a choice. You have a choice as a business owner as to what prices you're going to put on your services. It's not a bad thing if they're high. It's not a bad thing if they're low. If it meets your needs, happy days. But I think when you were talking then, it made me think, I reckon people are sometimes doing that bare minimum. So they're like, right, these are the bills, and then the bills are covered. And I'm like, but what about the rest of your life? Like, you can't sustain that for very long. It's not an enjoyable place to stay.
No, you can't build any savings or buffers or like extravagance. Like, you know,
like
purchases.
me, if I want to take the kids out and all I've factored in is the bills, well, then I'm screwed, because then we're all going to go stir crazy if I'm just stuck in the house, because that's all I can pay.
But Joe, if I charge more than that, I'm greedy.
Why? Why are you greedy? I don't understand this. I really, really struggle with it.
People
and I know
think
that
I'm greedy.
might come across as a bit harsh, but I struggle with it because there is enough money on this planet. It shows everywhere. Like, every time I hear cost of living come up, I only have to go into the town centre and restaurants are booming. Like, there's so many people shopping everywhere.
My husband went to Silverstone in July and he went to a corporate day for the qualifying day. Absolutely jam-packed. And not only that, like I think the lowest price ticket to get in Silverstone is like 70 quid or something if you're just standing. Like, count that by times how many people are going to be just stood around watching the race. And that's like only qualifying day. So like, yeah, that room of that corporate hospitality that day, he said, was absolutely rammed to the hill. There you go. And that's £1,000 day.
Yeah. People will spend what they are happy to spend on.
Yeah.
There are some things that I don't find valuable. We've said this before, like clothes, to me, I feel like should be a lot higher up on my priority list, but they're really not. So I will almost like do a big binge bulk buy in one hit and then go like, oh, that'll last me for ages, which I hate doing because then it works out really expensive in my head.
And you end up wearing threadbare clothes at the end of it.
Threadbare clothes at the end of it. But arguably, like, that couple of £100, let's say, that I'm going to invest on that big bulk buy, it pains me. And I'm like, oh my God, that's been a really expensive shop. Yeah, like the following day, I'll quite happily drop like 10 grand on a course that I haven't got, and I've had to go find a loan or a credit card for it. Totally see value in that though.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's just all that subjective stuff.
It can be.
Right. Probably got time for one more. How do I design my client's avatar? So who I'm trying to target?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I always think of your client avatar as what does your business exist for? So I think you have to take a step back and go, what's the purpose of your business? What are you going to be doing? So for us, for example, with K9 Business Academy, our ideal client is a dog trainer who wants more from their business, is feeling the pain of not having enough money, which means they've got no time, no freedom, which means they're not getting the inquiries in. So all of these like pain points, that's kind of our ideal.
Feeling stuck.
Yeah.
Not knowing where to put your focus.
So then when you have that person in mind, you then start to go, oh, okay, so where are these people? Like, where do they hang out? Both. It could be quite physically in like, oh, what location based are you in? Like, I mean, for us, it's global now. So we're going like, right, everywhere. But then you could go really targeted. So like we did with the dog training business, we was like, well, actually, our target audience here, who are we kind of typically attracting at the moment? What's the purpose of that business again? Where are we wanting to deliver that service? So the locality side of it. And then you can start looking into, well, what's the age range of these people? Like, does your messaging need to be a certain... It's really graphic.
Bit of a musical accompaniment.
I know, yeah.
Today's episode.
Do you need to start using different words and phrases because of the age of your audience? Or where do you then choose to put your messaging? So it impacts a lot of things.
And it's the platforms come massively into this as well. Because generally speaking, this is a generalisation, but let's look at the platforms. Facebook is generally for more local people. You can find people in groups there, local communities. It tends to be a place where typically older people tend to hang out. Older people, I'm in that bracket. And then you look at Instagram, and you know the demographic of all of these sites, by the way, is changing daily, isn't it? Like where TikTok came out, it was literally just for kids and dancing. It's not that anymore. It's gradually getting higher. But tends to be like a global, like an international type approach, doesn't it? So we very much put a lot of focus on Instagram because our business can take clients from all over the world, and it does. And this podcast reaches everybody all over the world as well. So that's where we put a lot of focus. But if I was just doing that dog training business again, all that focus was on that, I wouldn't really probably focus that much on Instagram. I'd go more local. I would be giving value in Facebook groups. I would be getting out and about and getting local in my local area as well.
Yeah. So it's really thinking about who is your perfect client in that, like literally what do they look like? Because what this allows you to do, and I think it's something that I've brought with me from my marketing days, and I don't think it probably resonates with a lot of people at the moment. And again, I'm generalizing, but when you start wanting to look into ads, and if you're going to do the ads yourself, when you know that client avatar inside out, you can, the way the technology is now, you can depict on all of these platforms what's the age range of the person you're looking for, what's their gender, what are their interests, what are they looking at. And when you know all of that, your messaging is going to land so much harder with them. And then if you are going down that ad route, they're more likely to see it because it will be posted in areas that you've identified as their interests. So getting into the head of your customer is so important. Even if you never do ads, it will help with your messaging. So really think about what problem, pain point your service is going to solve, and who does that person look like.
Yeah. And it's probably not you.
You definitely won't. Well, it's unlikely to be you. It's definitely not me in our training business. Yeah. I enjoyed this little one. It was a bit of a
short one, but we wanted to do this, so we covered all those questions. And
yeah, there are more questions, but we'll do like several little mini versions of this, I feel. So if you do want to get your questions in, then drop them in our Facebook group or drop us a DM on any of the socials, or the links are in the show notes.
Yeah. And on that, actually, thank you so much for listening. And if you would like to leave us a little review, we would love you to do that.